Welcome everybody, my name is Anthony James, founder and CEO of LinuxAcademy.com and CloudAssessments.com, and what we're doing here today is we are with Barnaby Ling, who has been a Linux Academy student and recently just passed all 5 AWS certifications. And so what we're going to do here is we're just going to ask him a few questions, see about his experiences on Linux Academy as well as with the exam. So Barney, why don't you just go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself real quick, and then we'll dive into some of those questions.
Thanks, Anthony. So yeah, I'm a developer over in Australia here. I run a team of developers, and we use AWS every day. And in order for me to get skilled up in AWS, I came across Linux Academy. And as you said, over the last few years, I've taken your courses from the associate level all the way up, and I've now completed all 5 of the main AWS certifications. And yeah, it's been really sort of beneficial to me in my professional career and just, my confidence as well. Like, so it's, I love learning about new technology, and I find that I'm nearly always learning something. So it's one of those industries that we're in where you just can't sit still. If you sort of try and rest on your laurels for too long, you end up sort of irrelevant. So you need to keep up to date. And I think, keeping up with your subscription with Linux Academy and all those kind of things, it can keep you, very relevant.
So I love this industry. One of the exams, you took the DevOps professional exam, which I'm sure focused around the tools of DevOps. But one of the cool DevOps principles is the fact of continuous learning, right? So when you build that in kind of culturally, if you build that in learning, you're always learning new things. Agile development, as you know, as a developer, stuff changes all the time. As we know, as AWS users, stuff changes all the time, which is really cool. So, which exam, tell us a little bit about your exam taking experience. You decided to get certified. You didn't originally decide to do all 5, I don't think. Which one did you decide to do first, and why?
Okay, yeah, so it's a good question. I started with the associate, system architecture exam. Mm-hmm. And, that's a good sort of grounding to get some exposure to some of the core services within AWS. And I guess the main reason for me certifying on that is we had a number of internal projects at work where I'm dealing with a lot of teams outside of either my firm or with external parties. And by being certified, it just gave me a little more confidence in dealing with them and, obviously a bit more professional credibility at work. So I started with the system architecture exam first, and from that got an appetite to do a lot more of the developer stuff. We weren't using DynamoDB and so on at the time, but I thought, what the hell? And so I took your course and did the developer exam, and lo and behold, I passed that. So I sat on those 2 for a while, probably about 8 months, and then through the course of just my daily work and so on, the SysOps one was the natural next step. And I found that with the certifications, it just it's a way of keeping you focused on a goal. Like you may not use all of the aspects that are, if you look at the course outline and so on, you may not use everything every day, but it's really good to know. It gives you a bit more focus. And for me, I like to, have focused studies. Otherwise, I end up going off on tangent and, nothing to show for it at the end. So
shiny object. As developers and admins and SysOps, it's always kind of want to play at the fun things, completely understand.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I mean, particularly in AWS, on the flip side of all this, like you go through the course and you do the exam, and it's like, probably the day you walk out of the exam, it's like it's all changing. And it's like, so I think a part of this is, maybe they need to have like a regular certification where you're just staying up to date almost month by month. Like
a certification that certifies you on all of the changes.
Yeah.
Don't give them any more ideas. Well, there's 9 certifications now. If you look at the specialty certifications, we're going to have a certification over the available certifications if we're not careful. It's going to get a little crazy.
Let's hope it doesn't go that way.
Yeah. But, no, please continue.
So I did the 2 associate ones, then did the SysOps one, and then I was coming up for my Sys Architect exam was, certification. My certification for that was coming up for expiry, and so instead of doing a renew at the same level, I thought, well, why not do the professional level one? And
you did that because if you get the professional level, it recertifies you on the associate level, right? So if you get
Yeah,
professional
that's exactly.
CSA, it recertifies you in the associate level CSA?
That's it. And so, I mean, probably regrettably, I was actually invited to the beta program for the professional for both the architecture and for the developer one because I was
Uh-huh.
one of the early people to do those, and I didn't do the beta one, and I probably always regretted that. I didn't like that idea of having to wait like 3 months before you got an answer.
Well, that,
Um,
and it's a lot. It's like you have to take all of the questions. It's like
yeah,
a minute per question, or, without going too many details, as obviously we can't. It's kind of crazy to take that.
No, I think it just depends on your personality type. Like I like that feeling of achievement as you go,
Sure.
and it can knock your confidence if you did it all and then didn't get an answer straight away for me. But anyway, so,
You need instant gratification, fail
yeah.
or pass, whatever it is. I need to know right now.
Part of when particularly with dealing with the cloud, like I like that sort of immediate effect. Like you can
Yeah.
have an instant effect. Like just the other day, I'm changing load balancers to for stickiness and changing. You can change things straight away. That it's just unreal. So I love that.
So
Anyway,
you're
we're going off
using AWS for your job day in and day out now. So kind of to summarize, what you're saying is that you had felt that the certifications would give you a little bit more, I don't know if credibility is the term, but perhaps
definitely.
a thought leadership within your organization. So it wasn't necessarily to get a job. It was to say, hey, I know what I'm talking about and want to be involved in kind of this transitions type setup.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, for me, obviously it's good to have the certifications. It looks really good on CV and so on. I'm probably one of those rare people that I actually enjoy what I do. I have a pretty good job, and
So
I'm
you're not
actually
interested in becoming an instructor, is what you're saying?
not at this point. When you open an Australian office, maybe.
It's all remote, or some of it's remote. We have Fort Worth office. You could be remote.
This is true. It's the sound of my voice, though. I'd probably I get sick of it. But anyway, point of the story is I really like building things. So I enjoy the challenge, and as I said before, like I found that doing a course and trying to achieve that certification was a bit of personal fulfillment. I liked the actual challenge of that aspect of it, and it then gave me something. So it was not just misdirected study that if I don't use it, it's like anything, if you don't use it, you lose it. It felt really focused. I had something achievable, and sure, it does look good on your CV and so on, but for me, it was very much, particularly in those early days, as you said, was about that thought leadership within my organisation and my own confidence as well. Like particularly dealing with third parties, vendors and so on that we often are dealing with. Having the certification and particularly those, the system architecture ones, like they're so broad, they touch on a lot of areas that are not my natural domain. As someone from a developer background, I'm not always the person that's setting IP ranges and dealing with internet gateways and all that kind of stuff and setting up bastion hosts and so on and so forth. So that's the kind of stuff that I'd normally leave to others. But I think, as we all know, like with the advent of the public cloud and so on, that's sort of a bit of a convergence between traditional what we call tin huggers and developers. So you need to learn a bit of both skills, and that very much plays into that whole DevOps approach, which particularly in Australia, a lot of organisations are going down. So
well, and with everybody, the cloud being so new, the expertise around that is not there. So even traditional sysadmins that are making the transition, just having more people like you who have knowledge around that and can facilitate that kind of continuous learning process for the organization, it's actually a really good thing for the organization, I think. So that's really cool that you did that. Number one, for your personal growth too, always be learning is a great thing. But number two, to help facilitate that transition in your organization.
Definitely. I mean, from me doing it, I mean, I've had a number of my guys that have also gone off and done their certification as well. So not to the same level, but it definitely helps. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, we've talked a little bit, you have all 5 certifications. I guess one of my questions probably would be, maybe what was your biggest challenge? And then, what helped you the most while you were at Linux Academy? Or, what kind of advice might you give other students? So I guess that's 3 questions. If you want to go ahead and do that, I can come back to them if you need to.
Okay, I mean, I guess the biggest challenge is, off the top of my head, the biggest challenge for me is there's a few domains within each of the exams that, are perhaps not my natural strong point. So, particularly around, some of the networking components, particularly in the architecture exam, the DevOps one, the developer and the DevOps one, and even the SysOps one to a degree suited me naturally. So I didn't struggle with those as much. But so the biggest challenge was having to learn, a lot more about, CIDR and all the different there's various aspects to infrastructure that I was not across. So I had to really skill up on that. And then obviously the day of the exams, there's nothing that really can prepare you for, like I did all the practice exams online as well. And, the Linux Academy courses, coming back to probably your second question, what I liked about Linux Academy is obviously, the labs, the study guides, particularly, I'd often print out your study guides at the end, when I'm on the way to the examination center, those kind of things help. And obviously,
last minute studying is, as long as you've been studying the whole time, last minute refresher is good. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. I think I also, most of the time I'd probably take either the morning off or the afternoon off, depending on when my exam was, and just, give myself some hours beforehand just to sort of relax and, go through all the material again. But I'm not suggesting at all that you should cram at the 11th hour. It is definitely the case that you have to follow through, many weeks of work beforehand. And particularly with your course, like your courses, sorry, like I like the structure. Like, you could go through it, consume it as you like, and go, follow your own. It sort of worked for you, basically. Like, particularly for me, I was able to often do it on the train and on the way back from work, and then when I get home, I can fire up a lab server and try things out and just muck around. So
since it's been a while, you probably haven't been able to use our new mobile apps when you were on the train.
No, you may recall, like I think because I was one of your earlier students, I used to push for getting offline access.
Specific example is a train. I was like, an hour? Is it like an hour ride train or something?
It is for me, yeah.
Oh, I remember. I specifically remember this now.
Yeah, so it's like, as I said before, like I'm always learning. So if I'm not reading, I'll be consuming some kind of online course. And unfortunately, where I am in Australia is, I'm in a fairly rural part, and the internet's not always reliable. So, it's probably okay, but it can be frustrating, you get the typical spinner when you're trying to get, hear your voice.
Well, the good news is, and I'm sure you know, but this, I guess, is a good opportunity as a shameless plug. The good news is we have brand new mobile apps that just came out. I've had offline video for a while, but, the team's really good. And so you have the offline video viewing where you can download it for the go now. So it's really cool. So, I appreciate you sharing your experiences. The one thing that we want to do here today is really show those who are interested in getting certified, especially, the 5 certifications. A lot of times there's a really big sense of urgency around going and getting those certifications where, just doing one at a time and being prepared for it and really learning to be qualified rather than just passing the certifications is a big deal. So, what kind of words of encouragement would you give current students or potential students? And when I say student, we can talk about people that are in college or people who are professionals like yourself who are just making the transition to the cloud. What type of words of encouragement would you give them for that, do you think?
Well, straight off the bat, I'd say don't rush. Like, you can't rush. The objective has got to be to learn. The certification is good, but the certification is not everything. Like, that's a validation of your skills at a point in time. I think the most important thing is you want to build that knowledge and sort of absorb that into your, into your professional ability. So you don't want to have that as your only goal. Your main goal, that's almost secondary. The certification, yes, it's something that you aim towards. As I said, it's a validation of the skills at a point in time, but it shouldn't be your only objective. For me as a developer, I want to be able to build things. And so I would say to others that, from a point, to encourage others is the more that you learn, the more sort of tools you have in your toolbox. And so the better things you can build. You don't know just one way of, deploying an application to AWS. There's so many different ways to do things, and they all have their pros and cons. So
For sure.
it just makes you a better professional. And as I said earlier, like I think in the IT industry, you really need to be able to demonstrate that you've got that capacity for continuous learning. You're basically always developing. So you're not just a person that said, okay, I want to get all 5 and I'm going to go out there and get them in 6 months. And I know I've heard of people that have done that, and I'm good on them if they can, but I'm like, there's no way I could have. And, as I said, like I sat on my associate ones until they were about to expire before I took the professional ones. And I think, whilst it's obviously good, I know there's a lot of, organizations, consulting organizations and so on that need you to have those professional certifications. So perhaps there's, a reason for them to sort of rush through them. But, everyone's got to sort of, I think, just accept that if you're in IT, it's just part and parcel of this industry that you've got to be continually learning. It's not an industry where it just sort of sits still. I have a lot of tradie friends that are like builders and electricians and so on. And, if they've got 20 years experience, you go like, wow, you really know how to build a house because it hasn't changed much. But in, maybe they'll take issue with that. Maybe it does change a bit. But within IT, it's like, the skills that you use to build websites, applications, mobile apps, whatever, from 10 years ago to now, I mean, you'd be silly. You have to sort of keep up to date. So
you're trying to say that you don't use front page anymore to build websites. Is this what you're saying?
No, definitely not. Definitely not. So it's like, yeah. So I mean, look, there's so many reasons to just keep learning. So I think that my words of encouragement to people would be not to rush it. Because that's just putting so much pressure on yourself as well. Sure. Like, take it at your own pace. And I mean, that's the beauty of online courses, like, is that you can do it at your own pace, and you can replay things. You can, you just really master a topic before you move on. So, my words of encouragement would be to accept that you're just going to have to keep learning. And I guess most importantly, you're never going to know it all either. Like, there's always going to be parts that you're never certain of. And so that's part of the fun of the certification, is to know, do I know enough? Like, I think I know enough. And then you can feel really proud of yourself that, yes, I did know enough that day. But it's certainly not a situation where you just want to get the certification and then you just want to finish. I think it's, as I said, it's a journey. It's all about the journey, not the end goal.
So would you agree that if you take the time ahead of time to really kind of focus on learning those concepts, not just being able to pass an exam, but actually really truly understanding the concepts and how to do things in AWS, that if you spend that time and investment up front, that it actually pays dividends. So you're learning as you go. Your first certification might take longer, but your second, your third, your fourth goes so much faster. It pays dividends. And it's not just to pass exams, it's actually, when you do it that way, you're qualified to run it in actual environments and to be an expert in organizations much like you. Would you agree with that assumption?
Very much so, definitely. I mean, it's exactly right. You've got to have that foundation, have the skills and a good learning approach and a good way to, consolidate those skills. And then, as you said, like, your subsequent certifications, they become quicker and quicker and easier. Hopefully it's because not only you have that good grounding, but you're more interested in the topic. You can probably, what everyone sort of discovers eventually is that there's only, it's depth of knowledge that's important, not necessarily breadth. And so it's, as you dig down further and further, you find, you're becoming more and more specialized, you're becoming more and more skilled, and it becomes a little easier.
For certain. So I got 2 questions left for you. I know we're getting closer to time. One, in our kind of pre-interview question back and forth, you had mentioned that you actually sit in and help interview people for teams. And so, we have a lot of students who aren't already inside of these environments. We have a lot of students who are. So what kind of advice would you say for somebody who's trying to prep for an interview in a cloud job or a developer in cloud job or that type of thing? What type of stuff do you look for that?
It's a good question. A number of things. Like I look for, to sort of allude to what we were talking about before, I look for a thirst for knowledge. So, a recognition that, I don't want someone to come in and say, I have all the answers. I know these are the ways to do it. I look for a thirst for knowledge. So someone that's, has that sort of demeanor that they're willing to learn. They know a lot. They've obviously got some certifications to get into the interview in the first place, or that's usually the first step. But so I look for that sort of mindset where they're continually learning. I also, it obviously helps in the IT game if you've got your own website, your own personal projects, maybe some GitHub repositories, like any kind of projects of your own that you could direct people to, I think is always helpful. Just that you're active in user groups and so on. Like I attend Melbourne AWS user groups and so on. Like there's a number of sort of things like that sort of demonstrate that someone's actually quite passionate about what they're doing. And not that that's always, sometimes you need people that can just come in, they can do the work and so on. But so you need to be able to validate that, they have the skills. I'm probably not always the nicest person in an interview because I will sometimes ask some technical questions, but never a super difficult one, but, just enough to realize that, they've, in a pressure situation like an interview, it's obviously good to have, some of that knowledge to be able to perform in those pressure situations. So I'll often ask some pretty simple questions. And as I said, and I also like to, listen to them and hear the passion from them and see how enthusiastic they are. And, I wouldn't want to hire them and then 6 months, 12 months later, they've gone backwards in their skills. Like I think gone are the days as well where you can sort of get a career and then that career is going to be your only means of training. I think some people have to take it on as their own responsibility to stay up to speed with things. Certainly that's something that I would look for.
Yeah, so too often, and a lot of times traditional schools kind of think this way, but too often is it, you've learned this skill, now that's all you have, that's it, you're done, and with everything changing, you might be using a regular relational database, but the application requirements change and you can scale faster by moving over to DynamoDB. That stuff happens all the time. So that's really great advice. I appreciate you sharing that. And one last question. Where do you see yourself, what do you see yourself, would be a better way of putting it, what do you see yourself focusing on next in terms of learning?
Yeah, look, it's a good question. As you can see from my Linux Academy stuff, like I've done some Linux certs and I've done some AWS certs, and now I'm actually going to have to go to the dark side and learn some Azure stuff. Over here in Australia, we have a lot of enterprises are easily led down the Azure road. So I'm gonna have to sort of roll up my sleeves and become quite knowledgeable in that space.
I think you put it. I put it in your questionnaire. No one ever got fired for buying Microsoft.
Yeah. Well, that's often said around here. It's a
necessary evil.
It is. So no, it is. It's the reality. It's we have so many enterprises here that have such an installed base of MS tools and so on that it's just it is the easy option. And as I said, no one gets fired for buying Microsoft. So
I will add on that Microsoft in the past 2 to 3 years has really just changed, right? So we, as Linux Academy, actually has multiple partnerships with Microsoft for Linux training, which 2 years ago you would, because that's really when the CEO came out and said it. But 4 or 5 years ago that would be unheard of, and now they're really embracing open source, and these other organizations who have existing license agreements and multi-year contracts with them are kind of seeing this adoption. They're speeding up on cloud computing with their Azure platform, and shameless plug here, you're obviously probably going to train at Linux Academy with our new hands-on Azure labs, right? It would be crazy if I didn't do that, since we just launched those today. But that's really exciting. It's something new. That I would say probably the downside and upside is They have multiple certifications coming out, and they're changing how they do all of their certifications. And as with everything, everything changes. And so that continuous learning that you've talked about is just continuously challenging. But once you learn and get that baseline set up, it's just fun at that point.
No, I agreed. And I mean, I am actually looking forward to it. I think, part of the challenge for me is, we support a lot of internal stuff that's obviously running on AWS at the moment. And the whole, as I think about it now, we're going to be supporting apps that are running in Azure and in AWS and on-premise. And it's just like, oh my God, like it's just...
That's multi-cloud. That could arguably be the new hotness. If you take a look at Netflix running across, Google Compute and AWS now. So Google Compute's another interest.
Yeah, I mean, I can see Google's the next thing. I mean, already we have a lot of sort of what we call, shadow IT happening in our firm with all these people using Google Docs and all the rest of it. And it's like, so, it's like, I think if we were to have this chat again in a few years' time, we'll have to be, it'll be multi-cloud. And so then I hope, we can move to, we've started playing with things like the serverless framework and stuff like that. And so we hope to be, using some standardized approaches that you could use across all platforms. That would be awesome.
For sure. Barney, this has been a great conversation. I'm excited to bring you back on and talk to you after you complete your Azure stuff. I know you're going through your MBA now, so I mean, you are just, you really kind of live, breathe, everything continuous learning. And so congratulations to you. And thanks for taking the time to help inspire others to do the same.
No worries, Anthony. Appreciate it. I love the courses that you guys do, and happy to help at any point. So I absolutely love Linux Academy, and I love what you do. So keep it up.
I appreciate you saying so. I look forward to hearing about your successes, and congratulations again.